Hey guys, tonight we're squeezing through the gates of a medieval city at the exact moment several thousand armed men decide nobody is leaving. Not the charming medieval city from your vacation brochure. Not the one with flower baskets, souvenir shops, and a cheerful man selling handmade candles for 40 euros. I mean a real medieval city under siege, crowded, smoky, terrified, and surrounded by people whose main hobby is launching pieces of the countryside over your walls. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Somehow, it is always 2 in the morning somewhere, and someone is always listening from a kitchen because their partner snores like a damaged siege engine. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, get comfortable and pull the blanket up around you. Perhaps keep one foot outside if you enjoy danger. Tonight, the danger is mostly imaginary, although the rats are extremely committed to the performance. And let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what actually happened to ordinary people when an enemy army surrounded their city? Did everyone immediately panic? Or did they first complain that the gates had closed before they finished shopping? How long would your groceries last if the supermarket was suddenly outside enemy lines? What would you eat after the bread disappeared? Your horse, your neighbor's pigeon, a leather belt softened in soup and described optimistically as beef. Where would thousands of refugees sleep after fleeing inside the walls? Who repaired the battlements while stones the size of washing machines arrived from the sky? Could you continue going to work while somebody was digging a tunnel beneath your house? What happened when the wells ran low, the graveyards filled up, and every person in town claimed to know someone whose cousin had heard that rescue was definitely coming on Thursday? Would you volunteer for night watch, or would you fake a knee problem and hide behind a barrel? Could you sleep through the screaming, hammering, church bells, barking dogs, and one extremely enthusiastic priest explaining that the apocalypse had excellent timing? And when someone finally suggested surrender, would you support it calmly, or accuse them of treason because you had eaten nothing but boiled peas for 6 weeks and were no longer emotionally balanced? Well, congratulations. You have just woken up inside a walled European city in the year 1356. Outside, an enemy army is spreading across the fields. Inside, the gates are closing. You have half a loaf of bread, one clean sock, and absolutely no influence over military strategy. Good luck. 1. The bells that should not be ringing. You wake before sunrise to the sound of bells. Not one bell, not the calm toll that tells you it is time to get up and begin another rewarding day of moving heavy objects for somebody wealthier than you. These bells are frantic, fast, uneven. They crash across the rooftops as though the church tower itself has seen something terrible. For a few seconds, you remain beneath your blanket. Perhaps it is a fire. Perhaps it is a feast day you forgot. Perhaps the priest has decided morning prayer should begin with a military assault on the ears. Then someone outside screams that an army has been sighted. Wonderful. You sit up too quickly and strike your head on a roof beam. The day has begun, and already the city is attacking you from within. Around you, the household wakes in confusion. A child begins crying. Your uncle asks where his boots are. Someone knocks over a clay cup. The dog starts barking because it has always wanted a management position. You pull on your cold, stiff tunic and step into a street already filling with people. Every window is open. Heads appear beneath shutters. Men hurry toward the walls. Women call children indoors, then send older ones back out to fetch water or news. Shopkeepers stand in their doorways looking offended, as if the enemy has arrived specifically to interfere with business. Above everything, the bells continue. In a medieval city, bells are your clock, announcement system, public calendar, and occasionally the loud metal voice of disaster. Everyone knows this pattern. It is the alarm. The sound means danger beyond the walls, and it means the gates may soon close. That last part sends the crowd moving. People hurry toward the main street, where mounted messengers force their way through carts and livestock. Their horses are white with sweat. One rider shouts that enemy banners were seen on the eastern road. Another claims villages are already burning. Nobody agrees on how many soldiers are coming. 5,000, says one man. 20,000, says another. A woman beside you announces there are at least 100,000 because her cousin's husband saw the dust cloud, and he has excellent eyesight. The truth is probably somewhere between unpleasant and far too many. You climb onto a barrel. Beyond the roofs, the eastern sky is brightening. Against it, you can make out a thin gray stain rising above the fields. Smoke. The countryside outside the walls contains farms, cottages, barns, orchards, mills, and villages. It feeds the city. It fills the markets. It contains nearly everything you need to continue being alive. And now an army is moving through it. The first refugees appear minutes later. They come through the eastern gate carrying bundles, tools, bedding, baskets, and children too frightened to cry. A farmer leads a cow while his wife drags a sack of grain. An old man carries a wooden chest that is clearly too heavy for him, but apparently contains something more important than his spine. More people follow. Carts jam beneath the gatehouse. Sheep scatter into the road. Guards shout for everyone to keep moving. A priest raises a wooden cross and begins praying loudly, perhaps for the city, perhaps for better crowd control. You stand in the cold morning air as the bells thunder overhead. Yesterday, the walls were simply part of the city. Old stone, familiar towers, something pigeons sat on. This morning, they are the only thing between you and thousands of armed strangers. And somewhere beyond the smoke, the army is still coming. 2. The gates slam shut. The army is still somewhere beyond the smoke when the order comes to close the gates. At first, nobody seems willing to believe it. The guards begin shouting from the gatehouse. Chains clatter. Men push against the heavy wooden doors while carts, animals, and terrified villagers continue forcing their way through the entrance. For one confused moment, everyone is moving in opposite directions. People inside want to see what is happening. People outside would very much like to stop being outside. You are caught between them, pressed against a wall by a woman carrying 2 chickens under one arm and a cooking pot under the other. One chicken is calm. The second has correctly understood the situation. The gate captain orders the road cleared. Nobody clears the road. A cart has lost a wheel beneath the archway. Its owner kneels in the mud, trying to repair it while 6 guards explain that medieval roadside assistance has now officially ended. Behind him, more refugees arrive with sacks of grain, rolled blankets, tools, cages, crying children, and the stunned expressions of people who left breakfast cooking over the fire. The guards drag the broken cart aside. Its owner protests until someone points toward the smoke. He stops protesting. Above you, the portcullis hangs ready. It is a heavy iron and wooden grill designed to drop through the gateway and turn a public entrance into a very final statement. You have walked beneath it hundreds of times without thinking much about it. Now you notice every pointed end. More riders approach along the road. For a hopeful moment, people think they are friendly scouts. Then someone on the wall shouts that enemy cavalry has appeared behind them. The entire crowd changes. Panic moves faster than any horse. People shove forward. A basket bursts open, scattering onions across the mud. A goat slips its rope and charges through the gate with the confidence of a minor noble. A child is lifted over a cart. Someone abandons a chest. Someone else grabs it immediately because even during catastrophe, theft remains extremely punctual. The guards begin pulling the doors inward. A farmer outside screams that his wife is already inside. A woman inside screams that her husband is still outside. Neither statement helps the gate move faster. You see faces beyond the narrowing gap. Some are close enough to touch. Others are still running down the road, carrying bundles that bounce against their backs. The soldiers at the gate look miserable, but they keep pushing. They have been ordered to protect the city. Protecting the city means closing people out. The great doors meet with a deep wooden crash. For a moment, everything is quiet. Then fists hammer against the other side. Voices shout through the timber. People beg to be admitted. Guards slide beams into place, locking the doors while pretending not to hear. The pounding continues. You stand there, unable to move. The city is safe now, everyone says. It does not feel safe. The portcullis drops with a roar, its points striking the ground. Chains tight. The drawbridge rises beyond the gate. One by one, the familiar ways out of the city disappear. From the wall, archers take their positions. Below, officials begin ordering the crowd away. Refugees are directed toward churches, barns, courtyards, and any building with spare floor space. Guards search carts for food, weapons, and suspicious passengers. A merchant complains that one of his barrels has been seized. The guard tells him the barrel contains grain. The merchant explains that it is private grain. The guard explains that private grain has entered a difficult period in its career. You return slowly toward your street. The bells are still ringing, but their meaning has changed. Before, they warned that danger was coming. Now they tell you that it has arrived. The walls surround you. The gates are barred. No one leaves without permission, and permission is not currently enjoying a generous mood. Yesterday, you could walk into the countryside whenever you pleased. Today, the entire world ends at the gate. And outside, the people who did not make it inside are growing quieter. 3. The countryside moves into your street. By midday, the city has doubled in population and halved in available floor space. The refugees who made it through the gates are now being pushed into every building that can hold a body without immediately collapsing. Churches open their doors. Guild halls clear benches. Stables fill beyond capacity. Workshops become sleeping quarters, kitchens, nurseries, and temporary arguments about who was there first. Your street, once merely crowded, has transformed into a livestock parade organized by panic. A family from a nearby village has settled beneath the overhang opposite your house. They own 3 blankets, 2 stools, 1 wooden chest, 4 children, and a pig with the emotional stability of a collapsing empire. The pig keeps escaping and investigating your doorway. Its owner apologizes each time. The pig does not. Farther down the road, a shepherd attempts to count his sheep while residents attempt to walk through them. Chickens flap onto windowsills. Geese hiss at soldiers. A cow stands in the middle of the lane, chewing patiently while the city reorganizes itself around her. She is coping better than most people. Officials move through the crowds, assigning shelter according to a system nobody understands and everyone considers unfair. Families with relatives inside the city are sent to stay with them. This sounds reasonable until you discover that a distant cousin you met once at a wedding has informed the authorities that your home is practically a palace. It is not. Your home consists of 1 main room, a small loft, and a cupboard that becomes damp whenever it rains in France. By evening, 12 additional people have been placed inside. There is the cousin, his wife, their children, his elderly mother, a farmhand, and 2 neighbors who joined them on the road. They carry sacks, tools, blankets, a basket of onions, and 1 cage containing a furious rooster. You ask how long they will be staying. Everyone looks toward the walls. Nobody answers. Sleeping arrangements begin with optimism. The elderly are given space near the hearth. Children are placed in the loft. Adults spread straw across the remaining floor. The farmhand offers to sleep beside the door, partly out of politeness, and partly because there is nowhere else to put him without hanging him from a ceiling beam. You attempt to preserve a narrow path between the hearth and the entrance. Within 10 minutes, someone places a sack of turnips there. Privacy disappears entirely. Every cough, whisper, complaint, prayer, and digestive event becomes public knowledge. Changing clothes requires strategic use of a blanket and the cooperation of 11 people who have suddenly become fascinated by the opposite wall. Cooking is even more complicated. Your household's evening pot was designed to feed perhaps 6 people. It now faces an audience of 18, including neighbors who have wandered in because they smelled onions. Water is added, then more water. A handful of barley becomes 2 handfuls of hope. The resulting stew is so thin that a bean passing through it could see the bottom. Everyone eats anyway. Outside, the streets remain crowded after dark. Refugees who found no indoor shelter sleep beneath market stalls, against church walls, and inside carts. Families build small fires where guards permit them. Babies cry. Animals shift and snort. Priests offer blessings. City officials continue shouting instructions as though volume might create more housing. The air grows thick with smoke, sweat, damp wool, and manure. You lie down in your usual corner and discover that it is no longer your usual corner. It belongs to your cousin's mother, who has already fallen asleep and snores with the steady confidence of a sawmill. You settle beside the rooster instead. The bird watches you suspiciously through the cage. Beyond the rooftops, enemy fires glow outside the walls. Inside, thousands of people whisper, cough, pray, and try to sleep in a city that suddenly feels much smaller than it did yesterday. You are surrounded by frightened strangers, displaced animals, and relatives you did not invite. The siege has not properly begun yet, and already you miss having nowhere to sit. 4, counting every sack of grain. The next morning, city officials arrive at your door carrying wax tablets, measuring scoops, and the expressions of men who have recently discovered arithmetic can become violent. They are counting food, not estimating it, not politely asking whether everyone has enough. They want to know exactly how much grain, flour, salt, dried meat, cheese, beans, peas, oil, and ale remains inside every household. This is difficult because nobody wants to tell them. The officials explain that supplies must be rationed for the good of the city. Your cousin explains that the half sack of barley beneath his blanket is for his elderly mother. His elderly mother explains that she has never seen that sack before in her life. The rooster says nothing but looks involved. One official enters your home and surveys the crowd. 18 people stare back at him from a room intended for 6. He begins writing. How many mouths? He asks. Everyone starts counting at once. Children are counted twice. The farmhand is briefly forgotten. Someone argues that a nursing baby should count as half a mouth, which leads to an uncomfortable discussion about whether the mother therefore counts as 1.5. The official closes his eyes. He has been awake since dawn. Next comes the food. You place your supplies on the table. 2 dark loaves, a pot of beans, several onions, a small wedge of cheese, dried herbs, and enough salt to make one meal taste faintly less hopeless. The official records everything. Then he points toward the cupboard. You pretend not to understand. He points again. Inside are 3 additional onions, a jar of fat, and a small bag of oats you had been saving for winter. Technically, it is now winter in the emotional sense. The oats are added to the list. Across the city, the same inspections are happening. Granaries are opened. Monasteries reveal storerooms filled with grain, beans, wine, and salted fish. Merchants protest while officials examine barrels they insist contain cloth, tools, or private religious materials. One private religious barrel contains lentils. Warehouse doors are sealed and guarded. Bakers are ordered to report how much flour they use. Millers must account for every sack delivered and every measure returned. Anyone caught hiding grain may face confiscation, fines, imprisonment, or the special public embarrassment reserved for people who hoard food while their neighbors starve. Naturally, this creates an immediate and thriving market in hidden food. People bury jars beneath floors. Grain is sewn into mattresses. Cheese disappears into walls. One merchant hides several sacks beneath piles of wool, apparently forgetting that hungry officials are capable of moving blankets. The city council meets to calculate how long the supplies will last. The answer depends on several questions. How many people are inside the walls? How much food was brought in? How much has been hidden? How much will spoil? How much will be eaten by rats? And how optimistic are the men performing the calculation? The first estimate says 3 months. The second says 6 weeks. The third man quietly suggests 27 days and is asked to leave the room because his attitude is damaging morale. Rationing begins almost immediately. Each household will receive measured portions based on its size. Bread production will be controlled. Grain cannot be sold without permission. Livestock feed will be reduced, which worries anyone who owns an animal and delights anyone currently living beside a noisy rooster. You are handed a small wooden token representing your future bread allowance. It feels absurdly light. Outside, notices are read aloud because most people cannot read them themselves. Crowds gather, listening carefully. Every announcement is followed by arguments. The wealthy complain that their stores are being taken. The poor complain that the wealthy still have stores worth taking. The officials complain about everyone. That evening, your household eats cautiously. The stew is thicker than yesterday's, but every spoonful now feels like a decision. No one takes seconds without looking around first. The children scrape their bowls clean. Your cousin hides the remaining bread. His mother watches where he puts it. Beyond the walls, the enemy has not attacked. They do not need to. They know every meal you eat brings them a little closer to victory. 5. Watching the enemy build a new town. The enemy does not attack the next morning. This should feel encouraging. It does not. Instead, they begin building. From the wall, you watch hundreds of soldiers, laborers, carpenters, servants, wagon drivers, cooks, smiths, and camp followers spread across the fields beyond the city. Tents rise in neat rows. Ditches are cut around the camp. Timber is unloaded. Horses are tethered. Cooking fires appear one after another until the countryside looks as though someone has built a second city specifically to ruin yours. You climb the wall beside a crowd of curious residents. The guards tell everyone to move back. Nobody moves back. People point toward distant banners and argue about which lord they belong to. A merchant insists the red and black standard belongs to a famous duke. A former soldier says it belongs to someone else entirely. An elderly woman claims the design is an evil symbol she once saw in a dream after eating bad cheese. The former soldier looks at the merchant. The merchant looks at the elderly woman. The elderly woman wins. Below, enemy troops begin cutting down orchards and dismantling fences. Fruit trees that took years to grow become firewood in minutes. Barns are empty. Hay is carried away. Any livestock left outside the walls is collected with the efficient enthusiasm of men shopping with somebody else's money. You recognize one of the farms. Its owner is standing near you. He watches soldiers tear the doors from his barn and lead away his ox. Nobody says anything. There is nothing useful to say. The besiegers are not simply camping. They are arranging roads between their positions, digging drainage channels, establishing kitchens, building storage areas, and placing guards around the approaches to the city. Scouts ride in wide circles to watch for relief forces. Patrols block roads and river crossings. Every route that once carried food, travelers, and news now leads through enemy hands. A group of carpenters begins assembling something large. At first, it is only a collection of beams laid across the grass. Then frames rise, ropes are stretched, wheels are attached. Someone beside you whispers that it is a trebuchet. Someone else says it is a mangonel. A third man says it does not matter because both throw rocks at houses. This is the most useful military analysis you hear all day. The enemy also builds wooden screens and covered shelters to protect men working closer to the walls. Archers take positions behind earthworks. Engineers inspect the ground near the moat and point toward sections of the fortifications. They are studying your city. They are measuring distances. They are deciding where it is weakest. You become uncomfortably aware that your home sits behind one of those weaker sections. By afternoon, smoke rises from enemy ovens. Soldiers line up for food. You can almost smell roasting meat when the wind turns. Inside the city, your household is measuring beans. This feels rude. Children gather on rooftops to watch the distant camp. Adults pretend not to be fascinated but keep finding reasons to visit the walls. Everyone wants to know what the enemy is doing, although each new answer makes sleep less likely. They are building ladders. They are preparing engines. They are digging trenches. They are cutting timber. They are not leaving. That last detail matters most. A raiding force moves quickly. It burns, steals, and disappears. This army has brought blacksmiths. It has brought ovens. It has brought spare shoes. An army that brings spare shoes expects to stay for quite some time. As evening falls, the enemy camp glows beneath hundreds of fires. Voices drift across the fields. Hammers continue striking long after sunset. Your own city grows quieter. People stand on the walls watching this new settlement take shape outside their home. The besiegers have food, space, fresh air, and access to the countryside. You have walls. For the moment, the walls are enough. But beyond them, the enemy is building patiently, eating well, and preparing to test that theory. 6. Your new job on the wall. The following morning, someone hands you a spear. This is surprising because yesterday, your most dangerous responsibility involved measuring cloth and arguing with customers about whether dark green was technically black. Today, apparently, you are part of the city's defense. A clerk stands in the square reading names from a wax tablet while guild leaders divide residents into work groups. Masons are sent to inspect the walls. Carpenters are assigned to gates, hoardings, and damaged roofs. Blacksmiths begin repairing helmets, crossbow parts, hinges, tools, and anything else made of iron that has suddenly become important. Everyone who can carry something is given something to carry. You are directed toward the northern wall with 30 other men from your district. Most of them are not soldiers. There is a baker, a cooper, 2 apprentices, a fish seller, an elderly tailor, and a man who spends most evenings asleep beside the tavern stove. He has been issued a helmet that covers one eye and appears deeply offended by the arrangement. The actual soldiers wait above. They wear padded coats, mail helmets, and the exhausted expressions of men who know they must now train a group of civilians without laughing openly. You climb a narrow stone staircase toward the battlements. The steps are steep, uneven, and crowded with people carrying baskets of stones, barrels of water, bundles of arrows, timber, and coils of rope. Someone above drops a hammer. It bounces past your foot and disappears down the stairs. Nobody stops to look for it. At the top, the wind hits you. The city spreads behind you in a confusion of tiled roofs, chimneys, towers, church spires, and smoke. Beyond the outer wall lies the enemy camp, larger than it appeared from below. Tents cover the fields. Soldiers move between earthworks. Carpenters continue assembling siege engines. From this height, you can see just how little open ground separates them from you. A sergeant explains your duties. You will keep watch. You will carry messages. You will bring ammunition to the crossbowmen. You will help push ladders away if attackers reach the wall. You will pour water on fires. You will obey orders immediately. You will not leave your position without permission. You will not fall asleep. The tavern man raises his hand. The sergeant ignores him. Then comes weapons instruction. The spear is simple, you are told. Keep the pointed end toward the enemy. This seems reasonable. You practice standing in a line without stabbing the baker. The baker fails the same exercise with you. The tailor struggles to lift his shield. One apprentice asks what happens if the enemy climbs over somewhere else. The sergeant tells him to be grateful. Nearby, experienced archers inspect bows and strings. Crossbowmen arrange bolts in wooden cases. Piles of stones are stacked along the battlements, ready to be dropped or thrown. Long poles with hooks are placed against the wall for pushing ladders away. Barrels of water stand beside tubs of sand for fighting fires. Everything has a purpose. Unfortunately, most of those purposes involve something reaching the wall that you would prefer did not. Below, women and older children carry supplies from the streets. Some bring bread and ale. Others haul cloth for bandages, buckets of water, or baskets filled with stones gathered from damaged buildings. Nobody is truly outside the defense now. Even children too small for the wall run messages between towers. The city has transformed every profession into a military profession. A baker supplies defenders. A carpenter strengthens gates. A priest encourages courage. A child carries arrows. You stand holding a spear and try to remember what you contribute. By midday, your shoulders ache from the shield. Your feet hurt. The helmet smells strongly of whoever wore it before you, and that person appears to have lived a complicated life. Nothing attacks. This is somehow worse. You watch enemy soldiers walking calmly between their tents. Occasionally, one looks toward the wall. You wonder whether he can see you. You hope not. Then the sergeant assigns the night watches. Your name is placed on the darkest, coldest portion of the schedule. You consider mentioning that you have no military experience, poor night vision, and a strong personal objection to arrows. But the sergeant has already moved on. You look down at the spear in your hands. Yesterday, the wall protected you. Today, you are expected to protect the wall. 7. The first stone arrives. The first stone arrives shortly after noon. You do not see the siege engine release it. You hear it. Beyond the wall, timber creaks beneath enormous tension. Ropes snap tight. Men shout in rhythm. Then comes a heavy mechanical crack, followed by a strange rushing sound somewhere above you. Everyone on the battlements looks up. For one peaceful, completely foolish moment, the stone seems almost graceful. It rises over the wall in a slow, dark arc, turning against the pale sky like an object that has forgotten it weighs several hundred pounds. Then it disappears behind the rooftops. A heartbeat later, something explodes 3 streets away. The ground jumps beneath your boots. Roof tiles burst into the air. A cloud of dust rises above the houses, followed by the crack of collapsing beams and the sharp chorus of people screaming. The baker beside you crosses himself. The tavern man removes his helmet, stares at it, and puts it back on as though the helmet has personally failed to prevent this. The sergeant begins shouting orders. Nobody listens because another siege engine is already firing. This time you see the release. The long wooden arm swings upward. Its sling whips forward, launching a second stone toward the city. It strikes the outer face of a tower with a deep, stomach-turning thud. Dust and fragments of masonry spill from the impact. The tower remains standing. Everyone cheers. The cheering stops when a third projectile sails overhead. Soon the bombardment settles into a rhythm. Creak, shout, release, silence, impact. The pauses are the worst. During each one, you wait to discover where the stone will land. It may hit the wall. It may strike a tower. It may overshoot completely and crush a house, shop, stable, or unfortunate person who believed standing in a courtyard was still a harmless activity. There is no warning precise enough to help. Someone shouts, "Incoming." This is useful in the same way that shouting "winter" during a snowstorm is useful. You crouch behind the battlement as another stone strikes nearby. Chips of masonry scatter across the walkway. One fragment slices through a man's sleeve and opens his arm. He stares at the blood with surprise, as if the wall has suddenly become unfriendly. Below, residents pour into the streets. Some run toward the damaged buildings to search for survivors. Others rush indoors, then realize roofs are one of the main objects currently being destroyed. Families gather beneath stone arches, inside cellars, or beside the strongest walls they can find. Everyone develops an immediate opinion about which part of the city is safest. Nobody has evidence. The enemy does not fire only stones. Smaller engines may throw lighter projectiles more quickly. Archers send arrows toward the battlements, forcing defenders to keep their heads down. Occasionally, bundles of burning material tumble over the wall, scattering sparks across rooftops and courtyards. The city bells begin ringing again. This time, they call people to fires. Smoke rises from a workshop near the southern wall. Bucket brigades form in the streets. Men and women pass water hand to hand, while others drag away timber and tear burning thatch from nearby buildings. On the battlements, the sergeant orders you to help move stones into place for the defenders. These are not the enemy's impressive stones. These are smaller local stones, carefully selected for dropping onto anyone foolish enough to climb a ladder. You haul them into a pile, and wonder how civilization reached the point where both sides are now exchanging pieces of the landscape. Another impact shakes the wall. A crack appears between two blocks of masonry. The masons arrive almost immediately. They inspect it, argue briefly, then begin carrying up timber, rubble, and earth. The wall must be reinforced before repeated strikes widen the damage. You ask one of them whether the crack is dangerous. He tells you all cracks are dangerous. Then he tells you to move. By evening, the bombardment slows. The city is coated in dust. Several roofs have collapsed. One tower is scarred but intact. Fires smolder beneath wet blankets and piles of sand. People step cautiously from shelter. The enemy camp prepares its evening meal. You look across the fields toward the siege engines resting in silence. Their crews will repair ropes, inspect beams, and begin again tomorrow. Behind you, a family digs through the remains of its home. The walls still stand. For today, this counts as victory. 8. Repairing the wall while it is being destroyed. The next morning, you discover that the wall has become a construction site. Unfortunately, the enemy is in charge of demolition. Masons arrive before sunrise to inspect yesterday's damage. They move along the battlements tapping stones, studying cracks, and speaking in low voices that make everyone nearby deeply uncomfortable. One section of the northern wall has shifted. Not collapsed. Shifted. This is apparently the sort of word experts use when they do not want ordinary people to run away screaming. The masons mark the damaged area with chalk and begin giving orders. Timber must be brought up. Loose stones must be cleared. Earth, rubble, and broken roof tiles must be packed behind the weakened section. Naturally, you are assigned to carry things. You spend the morning climbing stairs with baskets of dirt. Each basket is heavy enough to make you question every decision that led you to this point. The staircase is narrow, crowded, and constantly blocked by men carrying beams in the opposite direction. Nobody agrees who has the right of way. A carpenter shouts at you. A mason shouts at the carpenter. The sergeant shouts at everyone. The wall absorbs all criticism without improvement. Above, wooden braces are fitted against the damaged masonry. Thick beams are wedged into place to strengthen towers and gates. Behind the outer wall, laborers build an emergency bank of earth and rubble, creating a second obstacle in case the stone facing gives way. This is reassuring until you understand why it is necessary. The city is preparing for the possibility that part of the city may stop being a wall. The enemy begins firing shortly after breakfast. The first stone strikes farther south. The second lands inside the city. The third hits the section you are repairing. There is a deep crack, followed by a shower of dust and stone chips. Everyone crouches. One basket overturns, sending half an hour of carefully carried earth back down the stairs. The mason supervising the work looks at the mess. Then he points toward the courtyard. More earth. You begin again. Every few minutes, a lookout shouts a warning. Workers flatten themselves against the wall or shelter beneath wooden coverings. Then the projectile lands somewhere else, and everyone returns to work. There is no dramatic speech, no heroic music, just coughing, hammering, carrying, and the quiet realization that stopping would be more dangerous than continuing. Carpenters construct temporary barriers above the battlements to shield defenders from arrows. These wooden platforms, extending outward from the wall, allow stones and other unpleasant objects to be dropped directly onto attackers below. At the moment, however, they mostly provide shelter for nervous workers and one pigeon that refuses to contribute. You help drag a beam into position. It catches on the staircase. 6 men push from below, 4 pull from above. The beam moves suddenly, knocking the baker backward into a barrel of water. He emerges soaked, furious, and somehow still holding his helmet. The tavern man laughs until he is assigned to replace the spilled water. Morale returns briefly. Farther along the wall, smiths repair iron clamps and hinges. Lime mortar is mixed in tubs. Broken blocks are replaced where possible, while less important buildings inside the city are stripped for useful materials. An abandoned shed loses its roof. A merchant's damaged warehouse loses half its stones. The merchant objects. The wall does not. By midday, the bombardment grows heavier. Repeated impacts shake dust from every joint. The weakened section groans beneath your feet. Someone yells that the outer stones are moving. Workers retreat as part of the facing breaks away and crashes into the ditch below. Enemy soldiers cheer. Inside the city, nobody does. The masons inspect what remains. Then they order more rubble, more timber, and more earth. You stare at them. They stare back. Apparently, the professional response to a wall falling apart is to continue building the wall. By evening, the damaged section looks uglier but stronger. Fresh beams brace old stone. Packed earth fills the gaps. Broken masonry forms a rough inner barrier behind the breach. It is not elegant. It is not permanent. It may not survive tomorrow. But tonight it stands. You descend the stairs with dust in your hair, mortar on your clothes, and arms that no longer feel connected to your body. Behind you, masons continue working by torchlight. Beyond the fields, the enemy crews prepare their engines for morning. They will try to tear the wall down again, and you will carry it back up one basket at a time. 9. The Bucket Brigade. The fire begins with a single burning bundle. It arcs over the wall shortly after sunset, glowing against the dark sky like a badly timed festival decoration. For a moment, everyone watches it drift above the rooftops. Then it lands on a thatched house. The roof catches immediately. Dry reeds crackle, flames crawl upward. Sparks lift into the wind and scatter toward the neighboring buildings, all of which are made from timber, straw, plaster, and confidence. Someone rings the fire bell. This is a different bell from the siege alarm, although at this point the distinction feels unnecessarily academic. People pour into the street carrying buckets, pots, bowls, barrels, blankets, hooks, and anything else that might persuade a building to stop burning. You are handed a leather bucket. Nobody asks whether you know what to do. The answer is apparently run. A line forms between the nearest well and the burning house. Buckets pass from hand to hand, sloshing water over sleeves, shoes, children, and one elderly man who has positioned himself badly, but refuses to move because he was there first. You take a full bucket from the baker and pass it to the tailor. An empty one comes back. Then another full one. Then another empty one. This becomes your entire world. Take, turn, pass, repeat. The fire climbs higher. People on ladders throw water onto the roof, but much of it falls short or runs harmlessly down the walls. Others beat at the flames with wet cloth. Men carrying long iron hooks tear burning thatch away before it can spread. Chunks of roof tumble into the street. Everyone moves aside. Mostly. One man does not move quickly enough and disappears beneath a pile of smoking reeds. He emerges moments later without his cap and with several strong opinions about public safety. The wind pushes sparks across the lane. A second roof catches. Then a wooden balcony begins burning. Now the entire neighborhood is awake. Families drag furniture, bedding, grain sacks, and children into the street. A woman carries out a chair, returns inside, and comes back with a cooking pot. Her husband asks why she saved the chair first. She tells him the chair was closer. This is not the time for marriage counseling. The bucket line splits toward the second fire. Officials shout instructions. Soldiers clear the road. Priests pray loudly enough to suggest they are competing with the bells. Water becomes the main problem. Every bucket thrown onto the flames is water no longer available for drinking. Wells are already crowded and slow. Ropes scrape over stone as containers rise from the darkness below. Some households bring stored water voluntarily. Others claim they have none while standing beside suspiciously full barrels. Guards begin checking. Public cooperation improves immediately. You continue passing buckets until your arms begin to shake. Your tunic is soaked. Your hands are raw from leather handles. The tailor beside you mutters that he has not worked this hard since someone ordered 12 matching cloaks 3 days before a wedding. Then something crashes behind the burning house. A section of roof gives way. Flames burst through the open beams, bright enough to turn the street orange. Heat pushes everyone backward. Sparks swirl above the rooftops like insects. The house is lost. The goal changes. Nobody is trying to save it now. They are trying to keep the fire from consuming the entire district. Carpenters tear down a connecting shed. Residents rip away fences and wooden stalls to create a gap between buildings. It feels wrong to destroy houses while defending the city, but the logic is simple. A missing wall can be rebuilt. A burning neighborhood will rebuild itself as smoke. Hours pass. The bombardment slows, although occasional stones still land elsewhere in the city. You barely notice them now. Your attention has narrowed to the bucket in front of you and the flames refusing to die. At last, rain begins. Not much. Just a cold, miserable drizzle. Tonight it feels miraculous. The fire weakens. Wet ash settles into the street. Smoke hangs between the buildings, thick and bitter. People stamp out glowing fragments beneath their boots. By dawn, 2 houses and several sheds are gone. The neighboring roofs are blackened but standing. The residents gather around the ruins, staring at the places where their homes used to be. The enemy has not breached the wall. It has simply reached over it. You return your bucket to the well and walk home smelling of smoke, wet wool, and scorched hair. Your house is still standing. For now, this is considered excellent news. 10. Bread becomes a government matter. By the end of the week, bread is no longer simply food. It is law. Every loaf is counted. Every sack of flour is recorded. Every baker works under the eye of officials who now treat ovens like military fortifications. This creates tension because bakers are accustomed to being blamed when bread is too small, too burnt, too hard, too expensive, or shaped in a way someone finds personally insulting. They are less accustomed to armed guards standing beside the dough. Before sunrise, a crowd forms outside the main bakery. You join it carrying your ration token, a small piece of wood stamped with the mark of your district. It represents the amount of bread your household is allowed to receive. It also represents the city council's belief that 18 people can survive on a quantity normally served beside soup. The line stretches around the corner. Everyone is cold. Everyone is hungry. Everyone believes the people ahead are receiving larger loaves. A woman near the door claims the baker is hiding white flour for wealthy customers. A laborer says he saw a merchant leave through the back entrance carrying a basket. Someone else insists the basket contained laundry. Nobody has ever trusted laundry less. 2 guards stand beside the bakery doors. Their purpose is to keep order, although they spend most of the morning explaining that shouting will not create more grain. The crowd disagrees and continues testing the theory. Inside, the ovens burn without stopping. Bakers mix flour with water, salt, yeast, and an increasing variety of ingredients that would have been rejected during better times. Wheat flour is scarce, so barley, rye, oats, peas, and beans are ground and added. Bran goes into the dough. Then more bran. Some loaves contain husks, coarse meal, or grain damaged by damp storage. Every day the bread grows darker, rougher, and more determined to resist chewing. You finally reach the entrance. The official takes your token, checks a list, and hands you 2 loaves. They are smaller than yesterday's. You mention this. The official explains that the ration has been adjusted. You ask whether the enemy has stolen part of the loaf. The official does not enjoy this question. You carry the bread home beneath your cloak, not because it is raining, but because people have begun watching food. A loaf displayed openly now attracts the same attention as a purse of silver. On the way, you pass another bakery where the crowd has become less philosophical. A man is shouting that his ration is short. The baker shouts that the flour was damp. The man accuses him of cheating. The baker lifts the loaf and offers to weigh it against the man's head. The guards intervene before the city loses either bread or citizen. Rumors of dishonest bakers spread quickly. Some are accused of using false weights. Others supposedly sell extra loaves at night to anyone rich enough to pay. A few probably do. Sieges do not remove greed. They simply make it easier to measure. The council fixes the price of bread, but fixed prices cannot create flour. Merchants hide grain rather than sell it cheaply. Black markets appear in cellars, back rooms, and alleys. A small bag of flour can now be traded for boots. A fresh loaf may cost a silver coin after dark. A white loaf is discussed, with the reverence normally reserved for miracles. At home, your household gathers around the table. Your cousin cuts 1 loaf into careful slices. Every piece is examined. The children receive theirs first. The elderly mother watches the knife as if supervising surgery. Nobody speaks while eating. The bread is dense, gritty, and slightly sour. One bite contains something hard enough to be either a husk or a small stone. You remove it and continue chewing. The second loaf is wrapped in cloth and placed on a high shelf. Within the hour, 3 people have checked whether it is still there. That evening, officials announce another reduction in rations. The enemy has damaged a storehouse roof, and rain spoiled part of the grain beneath it. Rats have reached another supply. The mills cannot grind fast enough. Tomorrow, the loaves will be smaller again. You look at the remaining bread on the shelf. Outside the walls, the enemy waits. Inside them, the city begins fighting over crumbs. 11. The market where everything costs everything. The market still opens every morning. This is less a sign of normal life, and more a refusal to admit that normal life has packed a bag and escaped through a drainage ditch. The stalls remain in their usual places. Merchants unfold cloths over wooden tables. Scales are hung from hooks. Baskets are arranged carefully. People gather in the square with coins, tokens, household objects, and the increasingly desperate belief that something edible may still be available. At first glance, it almost resembles the market you remember. Then you notice what is missing. There is no fresh meat hanging from the butcher's hooks, no carts loaded with vegetables from nearby villages, no farmers arriving with eggs, milk, herbs, or fruit. The fish stalls are empty because the river approaches are controlled by the enemy, and apparently fish have refused to cross the siege lines without written guarantees. What remains is small, old, salted, dried, wilted, or deeply suspicious. A merchant offers a handful of onions. You ask the price. He names a figure that would have purchased an entire sack 2 weeks ago. You laugh. He does not. Around you, similar conversations end badly. A woman argues over 3 turnips. A carpenter offers a set of tools for a measure of oats. An elderly man attempts to trade a wool cloak for a wedge of cheese so small that the cheese appears embarrassed. Coins are losing their meaning. Food is becoming the true currency. A silver piece cannot be boiled into soup. A gold ring contains disappointingly little protein. People who began the siege with money now discover that wealth is useful only when someone is willing to exchange dinner for it. Many are not. Barter returns with astonishing speed. Boots are traded for beans. Candlesticks are traded for flour. A copper pot is exchanged for a smoked sausage that may have once been connected to an identifiable animal. You consider asking. Hunger advises against unnecessary research. Prices change by the hour. In the morning, rumors spread that a relief army has crossed the western hills. Grain sellers immediately lower their demands, fearing that fresh supplies may soon enter the city. By noon, someone claims the relief force turned back. Prices double before the church bell finishes ringing. By evening, another rumor says the enemy commander has died from fever. The price of onions briefly falls. The enemy commander appears alive outside the walls the following morning, looking healthy and extremely inconvenient. The onions recover. Officials try to control the chaos. Maximum prices are announced for bread, grain, salt, and other necessities. Merchants are warned against profiteering. This works beautifully for nearly 7 minutes. Sellers remove goods from public stalls and offer them privately in cellars or back rooms. A legal measure of beans costs 1 amount in daylight and 3 times as much if purchased from a man whispering beside the tannery after sunset. The black market grows because the official market has almost nothing black, white, green, or edible left to sell. You hear that one wealthy merchant has hidden barrels of salted pork beneath his house. Another supposedly has wheat stored inside false walls. A third is accused of feeding grain to his horses while children go hungry. The crowd gathers outside his home. He explains that the horses are essential for defense. The crowd explains that horses can also be eaten. The conversation becomes strategic. City guards arrive before the merchant's animals experience a sudden change in military assignment. Even common objects become expensive. Firewood costs more because people cannot safely gather it outside the walls. Charcoal is rationed. Lamp oil grows scarce. Soap disappears, although nobody seems quite as emotionally affected by this as you might hope. Salt becomes especially precious. Without it, meat spoils faster, vegetables cannot be preserved, and the already miserable food becomes even less cooperative. Small bags are guarded, hidden, and divided grain by grain. You watch a merchant weigh salt with the concentration of a jeweler handling diamonds. One customer sneezes. Everyone turns toward him, as though he has blown away the treasury. You arrive home carrying 4 onions, a handful of dried peas, and considerably fewer possessions than you had that morning. Your second-best cloak is gone. So is a small brass cup. The onions are placed on the table. Everyone admires them. They are soft, bruised, and beginning to sprout, but for several quiet seconds they look almost luxurious. Your cousin asks what they cost. You tell him. He stares at the onions again. Then he says they had better be very good onions. They are not. But by nightfall, after one is sliced thinly into the communal pot, the entire house leans toward the steam. The siege has turned a tired vegetable into an event. And tomorrow it may cost twice as much. 12, the mills have stopped turning. Now let's talk about flour. The city still has grain, technically. There are sacks of barley, rye, oats, peas, and wheat stored in cellars, warehouses, monasteries, and private homes. This sounds reassuring until someone points out that grain is not bread. Before it becomes bread, it must be ground. And most of the mills that once did this work are outside the walls. The watermill beside the river stopped turning on the first day of the siege. Enemy soldiers seized it, emptied its storehouse, and removed anything useful from the machinery. The windmill on the eastern ridge lasted slightly longer, mainly because nobody wanted to climb the hill. Then it caught fire. You watch its blackened arms hanging motionless against the sky. The city's food supply has encountered a mechanical problem. Inside the walls, every surviving hand mill, quern stone, mortar, and grinding tool is suddenly priceless. Officials search bakeries, convents, noble households, and workshops for anything capable of turning grain into meal. Private mills are registered. Naturally, several private mills immediately disappear. One household claims its grinding stone was lost years ago. The officials can hear it turning behind the wall. By afternoon, grinding stations are established in courtyards and guild halls. People line up carrying measured sacks of grain and leave hours later with smaller sacks of flour, sore shoulders, and a detailed understanding of why millers always look tired. You are assigned to hand quern. It consists of 2 heavy circular stones, one placed on top of the other. Grain is poured through a hole in the center. A wooden handle turns the upper stone, crushing the kernels between them. Simple. Slow. Awful. You sit across from the baker and begin turning. At first it feels almost easy. The stone scrapes in a steady circle. Grain cracks beneath it. Coarse meal spills around the edge onto a cloth. After 10 minutes, your shoulder begins to ache. After 20, your arm feels as though it belongs to an elderly stranger. After an hour, you develop a personal hatred of circles. The baker tells you to keep the motion steady. You tell him you are considering throwing the entire machine over the wall. He explains that the enemy would probably send it back. Around you, dozens of people grind grain. The courtyard fills with the harsh scrape of stone against stone. Dust floats in the air, coating faces, hair, clothes, and lungs. Everyone coughs. Nobody stops. The flour is coarse and gritty because hand grinding cannot match the quality of a large watermill. Tiny fragments of stone may mix into the meal as the querns wear down. These fragments eventually enter the bread and begin a separate siege against your teeth. Your teeth are already losing. Some grain must be ground twice. Damp grain clumps. Hard peas resist crushing. Oats produce more husk than flour and seem personally determined to waste everyone's time. Children help sift the meal through cloth. Older people pick out stones and debris. Strong adults take turns at the handles. The entire city has become one enormous, badly managed kitchen. Arguments break out over whose grain is next. A merchant insists his sack was placed ahead of yours. A woman says she has been waiting since morning. A monk reminds everyone that patience is a virtue. Someone asks whether patience can be baked. The monk leaves. Because grinding is so slow, bakers cannot use all the grain available to them. Ovens sit ready while flour arrives in pathetic amounts. People blame the bakers. The bakers blame the grinders. The grinders blame the officials. The officials blame enemy action. For once, everyone agrees with them. By evening, you have helped produce enough flour for several loaves. This feels impossible. Your hands are blistered. Your back is stiff. Flour dust has settled inside your nose, leaving every breath faintly flavored with barley. You carry the meal to the bakery beneath guard. Nothing is wasted. Flour spilled on the cloth is swept carefully into a bowl. Grain dropped on the ground is picked up kernel by kernel. Even the dust on the table receives attention. At home, you explain that you spent the day turning a stone. Your cousin asks whether you were punished for something. You tell him this was food preparation. The next morning, another sack is waiting beside the quern. The mills outside remain silent. Inside the city, thousands of hungry people turn heavy stones by hand, one exhausting circle at a time. 13 guarding the wells. It is time to talk about water. Not the pleasant kind that arrives from a tap whenever you turn a handle. Not the clear glass beside your bed that you ignore all night and suddenly consider essential at 3 in the morning. This water comes from a hole in the ground. And now the entire city wants it. Before the siege, the public well was simply part of daily life. People gathered there to fill buckets, exchange gossip, complain about prices, and learn which neighbor had embarrassed himself after too much ale. Now it is guarded by soldiers. A wooden barrier has been placed around the stone rim. Residents wait in long lines carrying jugs, pots, barrels, leather buckets, and every container capable of holding liquid, without immediately leaking onto their shoes. You join the line before sunrise. There are already 50 people ahead of you. A woman near the front claims she has been waiting since midnight. Another says she only stepped away for a moment and should be allowed back into her previous place. Nobody believes her. Sieges destroy trust with remarkable efficiency. The well-keeper lowers a bucket into the darkness. The rope slides over the worn stone edge, creaking beneath the weight. Then the bucket rises slowly, dripping precious water back into the shaft. Every spilled drop attracts attention. A child reaches toward the bucket. His mother pulls him away so quickly that his feet leave the ground. Water is now measured by household. Each person receives a limited amount for drinking and cooking. Washing has fallen so far down the list of priorities that mentioning it may cause open hostility. One man asks whether he can have extra water to bathe a wound. The guard asks to see the wound. The man changes his mind. You finally reach the front and present your household token. The keeper checks the mark, fills your jars, and warns you not to return until tomorrow. You ask whether this is enough for 18 people. He looks at the line behind you. Then he wishes you good health. This is not an answer. Carrying the water home becomes a military operation. The streets are crowded, uneven, and coated in mud, ash, straw, waste, and objects that have escaped from carts. You hold the largest jar against your chest with both arms. Every person who bumps into you becomes a potential murderer. A goat wanders into your path. You stop. The goat stops. For several seconds, the city's water supply is held hostage by an animal chewing rope. Eventually, someone pushes it aside. At home, the water is divided carefully. Some goes into the cooking pot. Some is set aside for drinking. A small portion is kept for the sick child in the loft. Nothing remains for washing bowls, clothing, hands, floors, or the rooster, who continues to smell as though he has made a deliberate choice. The wells are not the only concern. The city also depends on cisterns that collect rainwater. Some sit beneath courtyards or important buildings, protected from direct attack. Others are open tanks where leaves, insects, soot, and bird droppings contribute their own flavor. Officials inspect them daily. Rumors spread that the enemy plans to poison the water. This is possible in stories and occasionally attempted in war, but difficult when the wells are deep inside the walls. The rumor does not care about practical details. Soon, anyone seen carrying a strange powder near a well is questioned. A baker is arrested with a sack of flour. He spends an hour proving that he is merely unlucky, not treasonous. The greatest danger is simpler. Too many people are drawing too much water. The level in one well begins to fall. The rope must be lowered farther each morning. The bucket comes back with more mud. People whisper that the underground supply is drying up. A second well develops a foul smell. Officials close it immediately. The neighborhood protests until 3 people become ill. Then everyone protests more quietly. Water must also be saved for fires. Barrels stand ready at street corners, guarded against desperate residents who might try to drink from them. The barrels are marked for emergencies only. Hunger makes people weak. Thirst makes them inventive. One night, someone removes a lid and steals half a barrel using a cooking pot. The following morning, officials begin locking the fire water. The city is now protecting water from its own citizens, so it can later protect their homes. By evening, your household's jars are nearly empty. Everyone drinks in small sips. The children ask for more. The adults pretend not to be thirsty. Outside, rain clouds gather beyond the walls. Every face turns upward. For once, nobody complains about the weather. 14. The streets begin to fight back. Let's talk about sanitation. This will not be pleasant. Before the siege, the city already had a complicated relationship with cleanliness. Waste was carried to pits, dumped into channels, thrown onto refuse heaps, or removed by workers whose profession guaranteed they were never invited to sit near the food. It was not elegant, but it mostly functioned. Now the gates are closed, the population has swollen, the animals are crowded into every available space, and nothing can be carried safely outside. The city has begun digesting itself. Every household produces waste. Chamber pots fill overnight. Cooking scraps pile up. Ash spills from hearths. Horses, cattle, pigs, goats, chickens, dogs, and people all contribute to the streets with impressive consistency. The lanes are no longer merely dirty. They are active. You leave home one morning carrying an empty water jar and immediately step into something warm. You do not look down. There are moments when knowledge adds nothing. The main drainage channel through your district has stopped flowing. Refugees built shelters over part of it. Rubble from the bombardment blocks another section. A dead goat has become involved farther downhill. Wastewater now gathers in shallow pools between houses. Some of it is gray. Some of it is green. One puddle has bubbles. Children are ordered not to play near it, which guarantees they spend the morning throwing sticks into it from a slightly greater distance. City officials organize cleaning crews. You are assigned to one. Of course you are. A man hands you a shovel and points toward a mound near the market square. It contains spoiled vegetables, broken pottery, straw, manure, fish remains, ash, rags, and several objects best described as historical questions. The smell is powerful enough to alter your beliefs. You cover your mouth with cloth. This traps the smell beside your face. The crew loads waste into carts and drags it toward designated pits inside the walls. These pits were never intended to receive the output of an entire trapped city. They fill quickly. New pits are dug in courtyards, abandoned gardens, and ruined buildings. Lime is scattered where available. Straw and earth are thrown over the worst deposits. Every solution simply moves the smell somewhere else. Public latrines become disasters. People wait in line outside wooden structures that sway when the wind blows and leak when it rains. Privacy is limited to avoiding eye contact. One latrine near the southern wall collapses. Nobody is killed. Several people briefly wish they had been. The wealthy complain that the smell reaches their homes. The poor explain that the smell lives in theirs. Arguments break out over where rubbish may be dumped. One street accuses another of emptying buckets uphill, so everything flows downward at night. The accused street denies this. Then it begins raining, and evidence arrives. The market square becomes a shallow river of mud, dung, vegetable peelings, and household waste. Residents place boards across the worst sections, creating narrow walkways where everyone must balance while carrying food, water, or children. Falling off is now considered a medical event. Flies gather wherever the weather is warm enough. Rats multiply among the grain stores and rubbish heaps. Dogs drag scraps through alleys. Pigs, when allowed loose, eat some of the waste and spread the remainder with professional enthusiasm. The city orders animals confined. The animals disagree. Inside your crowded home, conditions are not much better. Water is too scarce for proper washing. Bedding remains damp. Bowls are wiped rather than cleaned. Clothes are hung near the hearth, where smoke adds a fresh layer of preservation. Everyone smells of sweat, ash, wet wool, and fear. Nobody notices their own odor anymore. Only new odors receive attention. Then people begin getting sick. At first it is stomach pain, then vomiting, then diarrhea. A child in the next house develops a fever. 2 refugees sleeping near the church cannot keep food down. The well-keeper warns that buckets must not touch the street. Rumors spread that the enemy has poisoned the air. The real explanation is less dramatic. Thousands of people are living beside their own waste. The city council orders stricter cleaning. Fines are announced for dumping refuse in the streets. Guards patrol the worst districts. One man is fined for emptying a chamber pot from an upper window. He argues that he shouted a warning first. The person below argues that the warning arrived after the contents. By evening, you return home exhausted, carrying the smell of the city on your boots, clothes, and soul. Outside the walls, the enemy continues waiting. Inside, the streets have joined the siege. And unlike the soldiers, they are already everywhere. 15. When sickness joins the siege. The first deaths are blamed on bad food. This is understandable. Most of the food is bad. A child near the western gate develops a fever after eating spoiled peas. An old woman begins vomiting beside the church. 3 soldiers complain of stomach cramps after drinking from a shallow cistern. For a day or two, everyone treats these as separate misfortunes. Then the coughing begins. It starts in the crowded shelters, where refugees sleep packed together on straw beneath church roofs and market awnings. 1 person coughs through the night. By morning, 5 others are coughing. Within a week, the sound follows you everywhere. Dry coughs, wet coughs, small coughs from children, deep, rattling coughs from people who have begun making peace with several personal regrets. You hear them through walls, beneath floors, across courtyards, and during prayer. The entire city sounds like an elderly cart attempting to climb a hill. Healers move from house to house carrying satchels filled with herbs, cloth, knives, cups, ointments, and tremendous confidence. One examines your cousin's youngest child, who has developed a fever. The healer presses a hand to the child's forehead, studies his tongue, smells his breath, and asks several questions about the moon. You had hoped for something more directly related to the fever. He explains that the child's humors may be unbalanced. This means there may be too much blood, phlegm, yellow bile, or black bile inside him. Apparently, the body is less a human being and more a badly managed stew. The treatment begins with an herbal drink. It smells like boiled grass mixed with offense. The child refuses it. Everyone explains that medicine is not supposed to taste pleasant, a principle healers have embraced with almost suspicious enthusiasm. Other patients receive poultices, wine, honey, vinegar, prayers, or bleeding. Leeches appear wherever leeches can be found, which is impressive considering nobody has enough clean water, but somehow there is always a damp container of medical worms. A soldier with fever is bled from the arm. He becomes pale and collapses. The healer announces that the treatment has revealed his weakness. This feels unfair to the soldier. Churches and guild halls are turned into makeshift infirmaries. Straw bedding covers the floors. Volunteers carry water, empty basins, prepare broth, and wash cloths whenever water can be spared. The sick lie shoulder to shoulder. Some recover. Many do not. There are no antibiotics, no laboratory tests, no understanding of bacteria or viruses. Illness may be blamed on foul air, spoiled food, divine punishment, poisoned wells, unlucky stars, or the presence of someone from a neighboring region whose accent has always seemed questionable. The city council orders smoke fires lit in certain streets to purify the air. Herbs are burned indoors. Vinegar is sprinkled on floors. People carry bunches of rosemary or other strong-smelling plants beneath their noses, which does little to stop disease, but makes dying smell slightly more organized. Fear spreads faster than the illness. Families hide sick relatives because they worry they will be removed from the home. Neighbors avoid houses where coughing can be heard. Merchants refuse coins handed over by visibly ill customers, although they usually accept them after wiping them on their sleeves. Rumors say an entire shelter near the southern wall has been sealed. Another rumor says bodies are being buried at night. This one is true. The churchyard is filling. Gravediggers work after dark because daylight is needed for wall repairs and because long funeral processions damage morale. Bodies are wrapped in cloth when cloth is available. When it is not, blankets, sacks, or cloaks are used. Families receive only a brief prayer. There is no time for more. One morning, the bells ring slowly. Not the alarm, not the fire signal, the funeral bell. It sounds once, then again, each note spreading through the cold air above the rooftops. Nobody asks who died. There are too many possibilities. At home, The feverish child finally drinks some water and falls asleep. His breathing is shallow but steady. Everyone watches him as though attention alone might keep him alive. Outside, the enemy remains beyond the walls. Inside, sickness moves freely from room to room without needing ladders, siege engines, or permission from the guards. The city has spent weeks preparing for soldiers. It was far less prepared for a cough. 16. The church fills with fear. It is time to pray. Not because anyone has suddenly become more spiritual. Because the walls are cracking, the wells are low, the bread is shrinking, and several people have developed the deeply unsettling habit of dying. The church fills before dawn. People crowd through the doors carrying candles, children, relics, blankets, and the exhausted expressions of those who have already tried every practical solution available. The nave smells of wax, damp wool, smoke, and illness. Every bench is occupied. Families sit on the floor. Refugees press against pillars. Soldiers stand near the entrance with helmets beneath their arms, pretending not to be frightened because fear looks unprofessional in uniform. You find a place beside your cousin and the feverish child. The boy is awake now, which is encouraging. He is also coughing into your sleeve. This is less encouraging. At the altar, priests prepare for a special mass asking for protection, mercy, victory, rain, food, health, and perhaps a slight reduction in the number of airborne stones. The list is becoming ambitious. Candles burn before painted saints. People leave coins, scraps of cloth, small loaves, and personal objects as offerings. One woman places a silver brooch before a statue. Her husband looks at the brooch, then at her, then at the empty space where their dinner money used to be. He decides this is not the moment. The priest begins speaking. His voice rises beneath the roof, echoing through the crowded church. He explains that the siege may be a test of faith, or punishment for sin, or an opportunity for courage. Possibly all three. Medieval sermons are flexible that way. He asks the city to repent. Immediately, everyone begins remembering things. Small thefts, large lies, adultery, cheating customers, watering ale, moving boundary stones, pretending not to hear a neighbor knocking during the first night of the siege. People confess quietly, loudly, sincerely, strategically, and sometimes with suspicious attention to what others are confessing. You hear a merchant admit that he used false weights. A baker admits nothing. This is noticed. After Mass, a procession forms. Priests carry crosses, banners, candles, and sacred relics through the streets. Bells ring slowly as the crowd follows, singing prayers. Some walk barefoot despite the cold. Others kneel whenever the procession stops. You join because everyone joins. Also because remaining behind might suggest that you support the enemy, disease, or both. The procession moves toward the walls. Soldiers watch from the battlements while priests bless the gates, towers, wells, granaries, and defenders. Holy water is sprinkled over stone, timber, weapons, helmets, and one confused horse. The horse appears spiritually unchanged. At the northern wall, the priest raises a relic toward the enemy camp. People whisper that it once belonged to a famous saint. Nobody is entirely sure which saint. The box is covered in gold and therefore considered persuasive. Outside, the besiegers continue building. Apparently, they have not received the theological update. Faith offers real comfort to many people. It gives structure to days that have become shapeless with fear. Morning prayer, evening prayer, bells, feast days, confession, and shared ritual remind everyone that the city is still a community. It has not yet become only a collection of hungry animals behind stone. But fear also makes religion sharper. People begin searching for reasons the city is suffering. Perhaps someone has angered God. Perhaps sinners are being protected. Perhaps a stranger has brought forbidden beliefs inside the walls. A foreign trader is accused of mocking a procession. He says he merely sneezed. The explanation is investigated. Old grudges acquire religious clothing. Neighbors report one another for blasphemy, missing mass, working on holy days, or owning objects that look suspicious in poor lighting. The priests urge calm. Some of them at least. Others preach that victory will come only after the city purges itself of corruption. This produces several uncomfortable glances toward wealthy officials. The wealthy officials suddenly prefer sermons about patience. At night, the churches remain open. The sick lie beneath the side aisles. Refugees sleep near the doors. Candles flicker beside families praying for relatives outside the walls. You kneel beside the child and listen to the murmur of hundreds of voices. Some ask for rescue. Some ask for forgiveness. Some ask only for tomorrow. Then a siege stone strikes somewhere nearby. Dust falls from the rafters. The congregation flinches as one body. The priest pauses. Then he continues praying. Nobody leaves. Outside, the enemy has engines, soldiers, food, and time. Inside, the city has fear, stubbornness, and every saint anyone can remember. At this point, you will use whatever is available. 17. Rumors become the main food supply. By now, nobody knows what is happening. Naturally, everyone has become an expert. News enters the city through messengers, shouted reports from the walls, captured soldiers, secret letters, distant banners, and people who once spoke to someone whose brother knows a stable boy near the western gate. This produces excellent accuracy. The first rumor of the morning says a relief army is approaching. It begins near the grain market, where a woman claims her nephew saw friendly banners beyond the northern hills. Within minutes, the army has grown from several hundred riders into 20,000 heavily armed men led personally by the king. By the time the story reaches your street, they are one day away. By the time it reaches the church, they are arriving before lunch. People smile for the first time in weeks. Merchants lower prices slightly. Soldiers stand straighter. Someone opens a hidden jar of honey because apparently survival has now been confirmed. Then a messenger arrives at the council hall. The banners belong to enemy scouts. The honey is quietly closed again. This does not kill the rumor. It merely creates another version. The relief army is still coming, people insist. It has taken a different road. It is moving at night. It is waiting for better weather. It has already defeated part of the enemy force but wishes to remain modest about it. Hope is extremely good at changing clothes. You hear the latest reports while waiting for water. The enemy commander is sick. No dead. No recovering. No poisoned by his own cook. No, the cook was poisoned by the commander because the soup looked disloyal. A man in front of you says the besiegers have only 3 days of food left. A woman behind you asks why their cooking fires still cover half the countryside. The man explains that they are burning empty pots to fool you. This answer satisfies nobody except him. The taverns become centers of military intelligence. People gather around weak ale and discuss troop movements they cannot see. Former soldiers draw maps in spilled beer. Merchants explain siege engineering. Priests interpret unusual clouds. One elderly man has predicted the enemy will attack very soon, every day for 3 weeks, and now enjoys the confidence of someone who cannot possibly remain wrong forever. You stop at the tavern after wall duty. A stranger whispers that there is a secret tunnel beneath the eastern district. Someone else says the tunnel leads out of the city. A third man says it leads into the enemy camp. The tavern keeper says it leads to his cellar and asks everyone to stop discussing it. By evening, the tunnel contains armed spies, hidden treasure, two traitorous officials, and possibly a dragon. The dragon is considered unlikely. The officials are not. Official announcements do little to help. A clerk stands in the square and reads a statement from the council. Supplies remain sufficient. The walls remain strong. Negotiations are not taking place. Relief is expected. The crowd listens carefully. Then everyone translates the statement into what they believe it secretly means. Supplies remain sufficient means the grain is gone. The walls remain strong means a tower is about to collapse. Negotiations are not taking place means the gates will open tonight. Relief is expected means nobody is coming. Even truthful information now sounds suspicious because truth has begun wearing the same expression as reassurance. The guards attempt to punish people who spread dangerous stories. This creates a new rumor that the guards are hiding dangerous stories. One man is arrested for claiming the enemy has infiltrated the city disguised as monks. His arrest proves to half the market that he was correct. You begin choosing rumors according to usefulness. You believe the relief army is coming because this helps you climb the wall in the morning. You do not believe the wells are poisoned because you still need to drink. You believe the enemy is running low on food, but do not examine why their horses look better fed than you. This is not foolishness. It is emotional rationing. At home, your household gathers around the hearth to exchange the day's reports. Everyone has heard something different. Your cousin says friendly troops are 2 days away. His mother says the enemy plans a final assault tomorrow. The farmhand says a captured soldier admitted the besiegers are exhausted. The rooster has no information, but reacts strongly to every version. You lie down listening to them argue. Outside, the enemy hammers, digs, cooks, and waits. Inside, the city feeds itself on whispers. The bread may be shrinking. The rumors remain unlimited. 18 hunting for spies. Fear soon turns inward. The enemy is still outside the walls, but people begin looking for him inside cupboards, cellars, monasteries, workshops, and the facial expressions of anyone they have never liked. It begins with a fire near the eastern gate. The flames are extinguished quickly, but someone says the blaze started too neatly to be an accident. Another person remembers seeing a stranger nearby. A third insists the stranger spoke with a foreign accent. By sunset, the stranger has become an enemy agent carrying secret maps, poison, and enough lamp oil to burn the entire city. Nobody can describe his face. This makes him extremely difficult to arrest and extremely easy to recognize everywhere. The council orders tighter watches at the gates, wells, granaries, towers, and ammunition stores. Guards search wagons, inspect cellars, and question anyone wandering after dark without a convincing reason. Unfortunately, nearly everyone has an unconvincing reason. A baker's apprentice is stopped carrying flour at midnight. He explains that the bakery works through the night. The guards consider this suspicious until they remember bread. A priest is questioned near the western wall because he is holding a lantern and speaking quietly to another man. They are discussing a funeral. This is accepted, although only after the dead person is identified. You are assigned to patrol your district with the baker and the tavern man. The tavern man has received a shorter spear after nearly removing a shop sign with the first one. Your instructions are simple. Watch for strangers. Watch for signals. Watch for hidden weapons. Watch for anyone tampering with wells, gates, walls, fires, or food stores. Also watch for thieves, deserters, hoarders, and people spreading panic. Essentially, watch everyone. You begin with the rooftops. Rumors claim spies are signaling the enemy using lanterns. Every light after curfew becomes evidence. A widow places a candle in her window while tending her sick daughter, and 3 neighbors report her before the wax has melted. Guards search the house. They find 1 ill child, 2 blankets, a bowl of broth, and no strategic communication with the besieging army. The neighbors remain unconvinced. Another rumor concerns pigeons. The enemy is supposedly receiving messages tied to their legs. Residents begin trapping birds across the city. Most contain no messages. One contains a piece of string. This causes several hours of official excitement before someone remembers children exist. Suspicion settles most heavily on outsiders. Foreign merchants, pilgrims, wandering craftsmen, refugees, and anyone from a rival town are watched closely. People who once tolerated different accents now hear treason in every vowel. A cloth dealer from another region is accused after drawing a rough map in the dirt. He explains that he was showing someone where his village stood. The crowd explains that villages are exactly the sort of places found on military maps. He is taken away for questioning. Nobody knows whether he returns. Old disputes become accusations. One neighbor reports another for walking near the grain warehouse. The accused man says he was searching for his escaped pig. The neighbor says this is a convenient story. The pig is later found inside the warehouse. This proves either innocence or advanced planning. Even officials are suspected. Why did one council member argue for surrender? Why does another still have wine? Why was a gate captain seen speaking to a captured soldier? Every decision becomes evidence of betrayal because people find treason easier to accept than hunger, chance, or poor leadership. At least treason has a face. One evening, shouting erupts near the southern gate. A man has been caught with a bundle of arrows hidden beneath his cloak. The crowd gathers quickly. Some demand execution before anyone asks why he has them. The man insists he is carrying the arrows to his brother on the wall. His brother confirms this. The crowd is disappointed. Public suspicion has become entertainment, and innocence rarely provides a satisfying ending. You continue your patrol after dark. The streets are quiet except for coughing, distant hammering, and the occasional crash of a siege stone. Every doorway looks deeper than it should. Every moving shadow resembles a saboteur until it becomes a cat. Then the cat knocks over a bucket. The tavern man nearly attacks it. By the time you return home, you have found no spies. You have questioned 2 refugees, frightened a monk, searched an empty shed, and discovered that the baker snores while walking slowly. The enemy remains outside. But inside the city, trust has become another rationed resource. And everyone believes someone else is receiving too much. 19. The ground starts making noises. The first sign of trouble is a tapping beneath the floor. At least you think it is beneath the floor. It might be a rat. It might be settling stone. It might be your cousin, attempting to hide another bag of grain beneath the house. Then the tapping comes again. Slow, regular, far too patient for a rat. You stop speaking. Everyone in the room listens. The rooster tilts its head, which is not helpful but feels official. Another dull knock rises through the earth. Then another. Across the city, people have been warned to listen for digging. The enemy may be trying to mine beneath the walls, tunneling under a tower or gate until the foundations can be weakened. The idea is simple. Dig beneath something important. Support the tunnel with timber. Set the timber on fire. Allow gravity to finish the military strategy. You immediately report the sound. Within an hour, 2 soldiers, a mason, an engineer, a clerk, and a man who claims to know a great deal about soil are standing in your home. The soil expert presses his ear against the floor. Everyone watches. He listens for several moments, then announces that he hears nothing. The tapping begins again while he is still speaking. His reputation suffers. Boards are lifted, straw is pulled aside. A section of floor is cleared until damp earth lies exposed. The engineer kneels and presses a metal bowl against the ground, using it to amplify vibrations. You are impressed. Then he asks everyone to stop breathing so loudly. The entire household holds its breath. Deep below, something scrapes. The engineer's face changes. This is never reassuring. Word spreads that miners may be working beneath the eastern district. Residents are ordered from several houses near the wall. Cellars are cleared. Guards seal the lanes while teams begin digging a countermine. Naturally, they need laborers. Naturally, you are available. By afternoon, you are descending into a narrow shaft beneath a warehouse, holding a shovel and a lamp that produces more smoke than light. The tunnel is low enough that you cannot stand upright. Timber braces press against the walls. Loose soil trickles from above whenever someone moves too quickly. The air smells of damp earth, sweat, oil, and fear. Mostly fear. You crawl forward behind a miner whose entire professional philosophy appears to be, keep digging until something happens. Men work in shifts, cutting into the soil with picks and shovels. Baskets of earth are dragged backward on ropes. The tunnel grows slowly, one miserable foot at a time. Nobody knows exactly where the enemy tunnel is. You are trying to intercept a sound in the dark. It is like searching for a noisy worm with military funding. Every few minutes, work stops. Lamps are shielded. Everyone listens. Sometimes you hear tapping. Sometimes scraping. Once you hear a low rumble and become certain the roof is collapsing. It is the miner in front of you digesting lunch. Apologies are made. Eventually, the tapping grows louder. The enemy is close. The soldiers move forward with shields, short swords, axes, and torches. Fighting underground requires smaller weapons because there is no space to swing anything impressive. This is disappointing to anyone hopping for a heroic pose. The final section is dug cautiously. Earth falls away. A dark opening appears. For 1 second, both sides stare through the gap. An enemy miner looks back at you. He appears equally surprised. Then everyone begins shouting. The tunnel erupts into confusion. Men stab through the opening with spears. Picks are swung. Torches fall. Smoke fills the cramped space. You attempt to move backward, but discover that 5 men behind you have made the same decision. Someone throws a basket. Someone else throws dirt. A soldier pushes forward and widens the opening with an axe. The enemy retreats deeper into its tunnel. Your side follows long enough to set fire to their wooden supports, then withdraws before the flames consume the air or bring the roof down. You scramble back through the countermine as smoke rolls behind you. The ground shakes. Timbers crack. A heavy collapse travels through the earth like distant thunder. Back above, part of the street sinks several inches. A wall develops a crack. The city officials call the operation successful. The residents whose houses now lean slightly disagree. By nightfall, the enemy tunnel is blocked. At least that tunnel is blocked. Lookouts continue listening in cellars and quiet rooms across the city. Bowls are placed against floors. Guards inspect foundations. You return home covered in mud from head to toe. Your cousin asks what happened. You explain that you met the enemy underground and threw soil at him. He nods slowly. This is not the heroic war story he expected. You lie down on the floor, exhausted. A faint tapping rises somewhere beneath the street. Nobody moves. The rooster looks at you. Apparently, there is another tunnel. 20. Night watch in the rain. It is time for your turn on the wall. Naturally, it is raining. Not dramatic rain, not the kind that washes the streets clean or fills the wells in one glorious downpour. This is a thin, cold drizzle that slips through wool, runs down your neck, and settles inside your boots with the patience of a tax collector. You report to the northern tower after sunset. The sergeant checks your name, looks at your spear, and asks whether you are awake. You say yes. He looks unconvinced. Your watch lasts until dawn. This feels less like a duty and more like a personal attack on sleep. The battlements are slick beneath your feet. Water runs between the stones and drips from the wooden hoardings above. Braziers burn at intervals along the wall, but they provide warmth only if you stand close enough to set part of yourself on fire. You choose the cold. Beside you stands the baker, wrapped in a cloak that appears to have absorbed half the weather. The tavern man is stationed farther along the wall with his shorter spear and strict instructions not to lean on anything important. Below, the enemy camp glows through the rain. Hundreds of fires flicker across the fields. Tents sag beneath the water. Guards move between earthworks carrying lanterns. Horses shift in their lines. The enemy looks miserable. This is encouraging. They also look well fed. This is less encouraging. Your task is to watch the darkness between the camp and the city. Attackers may approach quietly with ladders, grappling hooks, bundles of brush for filling the ditch, or tools for damaging the gate. They may crawl through mud, hide beneath shields, or wait until the guards are tired. The guards are tired immediately. For the first hour, nothing happens. You stare into the darkness until every bush becomes a crouching soldier. A broken fence post appears to move. A pile of earth develops shoulders. A sheep wanders near the outer ditch and nearly causes a full military response. The baker notices it first. There, he whispers. You grip your spear. The shape moves slowly. The baker raises the alarm halfway, before the sheep turns sideways and reveals itself. The sergeant says several things about the baker's eyesight. The sheep continues its patrol. Another hour passes. Rain taps against helmets and wooden shields. Your fingers stiffen around the spear. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, trying to keep blood moving. The baker begins discussing bread. Not current bread. Past bread. Soft white loaves, warm crusts, rolls brushed with butter, festival cakes filled with honey. You ask him to stop. He continues for several minutes, because suffering enjoys company. Somewhere behind the wall, a baby cries. A dog barks. The church bell marks the hour with a dull note. Farther along the battlements, a guard coughs. Then another answers. For one strange moment, the city and enemy camp are almost quiet. You can hear rain falling into the moat. You can hear your own breathing. You can hear something scraping below. You freeze. The baker hears it too. This time, neither of you speaks. The sound comes again. Wood against stone. Slow and careful. You peer over the battlement, but see nothing beneath the wall. The darkness seems thicker there. You signal the nearest guard. He approaches, listens, then orders a lantern shielded and lowered on a rope. The small light descends toward the base of the wall. For a moment, it reveals only wet stone and mud. Then a shape moves. Someone below pulls away. The guard shouts. The alarm bell rings. Suddenly, the entire wall wakes. Archers rush into position. Crossbow strings tight. Soldiers carry torches toward the parapet. Men shout down into the darkness. You lean over just far enough to see figures running back across the ditch. Enemy scouts. Perhaps they were measuring the wall. Perhaps preparing ropes. Perhaps simply testing whether the watch was awake. Bolts and arrows vanish into the rain after them. Nobody knows whether they strike anything. Within minutes, the field is empty again. The sergeant orders everyone to remain alert. This is the sort of instruction that sounds much easier after the danger has left. The rest of the night passes without another incident. Now every shadow looks real. Every noise deserves attention. A falling barrel inside the city starts a second alarm. A dog near the gate causes a third. By dawn, your nerves feel scraped clean. The rain finally stops as the eastern sky turns gray. Your replacement climbs the stairs looking warm, dry, and offensively rested. You hand him the spear. He asks whether anything happened. You look toward the dark field, the wet wall, and the sheep still wandering near the ditch. Nothing much, you say. Then you walk home through the waking city, cold to the bone and too tired to sleep. Tonight the wall remained safe, mostly because everyone was terrified enough to stay awake. 21. The sudden attack at dawn. You are halfway home when the horns begin. The sound rolls across the city just before sunrise, low and ugly, followed by drums from beyond the walls. For one hopeful second, you consider pretending you did not hear them. Then every bell in the city starts ringing. You turn around. People spill into the streets, some dressed, some carrying clothes, and some wearing the expression of someone who has just realized retirement will not be happening today. Soldiers race toward the walls. Children run messages between towers. Priests appear in doorways holding crosses and shouting blessings at anyone moving quickly enough to receive one. You climb the northern stairs again. Your replacement is still holding your spear. He looks at you. You look at him. Neither of you feels this is fair. Beyond the battlements, the enemy is advancing. Lines of archers move forward behind wooden shields. Men carry ladders on their shoulders. Others drag bundles of brushwood toward the ditch, hopping to fill the mud and create a path to the walls. The darkness had hidden thousands of them. Now the rising light reveals everything. Drums beat steadily. Officers shout. Banners lift above the moving crowd. The field that seemed empty minutes ago is suddenly packed with men whose morning plans involve entering your city without permission. Enemy archers fire first. Arrows rise in dark clouds and fall toward the battlements. Defenders crouch behind stone and wooden screens. Shafts strike shields, walls, roofs, and occasionally people. One arrow sticks in the baker's shield. He stares at it. Then he explains that the shield belongs to the city, and he will not be paying for repairs. Crossbowmen step forward, fire, and retreat to reload. Archers loose arrows through gaps in the defenses. Stones are carried to the wall. Buckets of water are placed near braziers. Below, attackers reach the ditch. Some throw in branches, straw, timber, and earth. Others raise shields overhead while defenders rain arrows and stones upon them. Men fall, more step forward. The ladders arrive next. They strike the wall with heavy wooden knocks. One lands directly beneath you. A hooked pole is pushed into your hands. The sergeant orders you to shove the ladder away. You lean over the wall. Faces climb toward you. This is the closest you have seen the enemy. They do not look like monsters. They look cold, frightened, muddy, and determined. This somehow makes everything worse. You hook the ladder and push. Nothing happens. The ladder is heavy and packed with men. The baker joins you, then the tavern man. Together you strain against the pole while arrows strike the stone nearby. The ladder begins to tilt. A man near the top reaches for the battlement. For one terrible moment, his hand closes around the edge. Then the ladder falls backward. It carries everyone on it into the men below. Nobody celebrates for long because another ladder rises several yards away. The wall becomes chaos. Defenders throw stones, roof tiles, broken masonry, and pieces of timber. Long spears jab downward. Hooks catch ladders. Sand and water are used against burning material. Orders disappear beneath screaming, bells, drums, splintering wood, and the constant slap of arrows against shields. A soldier beside you is struck in the shoulder. He falls backward. Two people drag him toward the stairs, while another man takes his place before the blood has stopped spreading across the stones. At the gate, attackers swing axes beneath protective coverings. The gatehouse defenders drop stones through openings above them. Smoke rises as burning bundles are pushed against the doors. Inside the city, the bucket brigade forms again. Nobody needs instructions anymore. The assault continues until the sun is fully above the horizon. Then, almost as suddenly as it began, the enemy horns signal retreat. The ladders are abandoned. Survivors run back across the field. Defenders continue firing until they are out of range. Silence returns slowly. The wall is covered with broken arrows, blood, loose stones, and exhausted people. Someone begins cheering. Others join. The enemy failed to enter. You lean against the battlement, too tired to raise your arms. Below, the attackers carry away their wounded and prepare new ladders. The sergeant tells everyone to remain at their posts. This was not the final attack. It was only the enemy checking whether you were ready. You look at the damaged wall, the wounded defenders, and the spear still shaking in your hand. Apparently, the answer was technically yes. 22. The wounded return from the wall. Once the fighting stops, the wounded begin coming down. At first, they arrive one or two at a time. A soldier with an arrow through his arm. A carpenter with a split scalp. A young apprentice carried between two men because one of his legs bends in a direction legs were never asked to consider. Then the numbers grow. The stairways from the walls fill with blood, mud, broken shields, and exhausted defenders trying to support friends who can no longer walk. Doors open across the city. Churches, guild halls, workshops, and large homes become treatment rooms because the actual hospitals, where they exist, were not designed for an entire morning of military enthusiasm. You help carry the soldier who fell beside you. He is conscious. This sounds encouraging until he begins asking whether the arrow is still inside him. It is. You tell him not to look. He looks. This was predictable. The Guildhall floor has been covered with straw. Tables are cleared for surgery. Buckets of water, wine, vinegar, cloth, and tools stand nearby. The room smells of sweat, smoke, blood, wet wool, and the sharp herbs being crushed by assistants who appear to believe fragrance is half the treatment. A surgeon examines the soldier's shoulder. He presses around the wound. The soldier screams. The surgeon nods thoughtfully, as though the scream has confirmed a complicated theory. The arrowhead may be lodged near the bone. It must be removed. There is no proper anesthesia. The soldier is given strong ale and a strip of leather to bite. Two men hold his arms. You are told to keep his legs still. This seems unfair to everyone involved. The surgeon cuts the shaft shorter, widens the wound, and begins working with iron instruments. You stare at the wall. The soldier grips your wrist with enough force to turn your fingers numb. Someone nearby is praying. Someone else is vomiting. The surgeon continues calmly. Medieval surgery is not gentle, but it is not always foolish. Experienced practitioners know how to remove arrows, stitch wounds, set bones, drain abscesses, and stop bleeding. They simply do it without antibiotics, modern pain relief, sterile rooms, or the reassuring knowledge that the tools were not recently used on a different person. The arrowhead finally comes free. It lands in a metal bowl with a small clink. The soldier stops screaming and begins breathing in quick, shallow gasps. The wound is washed with wine, packed and bandaged. The surgeon says infection is now the main danger. This is like surviving a roof collapse and being told the weather may finish the job. Across the hall, broken limbs are pulled straight and tied between wooden splints. Deep cuts are stitched with thread. Burns are covered in grease, honey, herbs, or linen. Bleeding is controlled with pressure, bandages, cautery, and determination. The smell of burned flesh appears. You decide the arrow removal was enough education for one day. Not every wound can be treated. A man with a crushed chest is placed near the wall with a priest beside him. Another has lost too much blood. A defender struck in the stomach lies very still while his wife holds his hand. The healers move past those they cannot save. There are too many others waiting. Triage has existed long before anyone gave it a neat modern name. Help goes where help may still work. Families arrive searching for relatives. Names are shouted across the hall. Children stand near the entrance, looking at every covered shape on the floor. Some find who they came for. Some do not. Outside, carts collect the dead. The bodies are separated from the wounded because space is needed. Cloaks are drawn over faces. Personal belongings are placed beside them when anyone has time to notice. A clerk attempts to record names. Several men are unknown. One was a refugee. Another had been assigned to the wall only days earlier. The clerk leaves blank spaces. By evening, the guild hall grows quieter. The worst shouting has ended. Now there are groans, whispered prayers, and the soft movement of volunteers replacing cloths and carrying water. The soldier you helped is asleep. His face is pale, but he is alive. The surgeon tells you the next few days will decide everything. You step outside. The street is stained where the wounded were carried through it. Above, defenders are already repairing the battlements and stacking fresh stones. Beyond the walls, the enemy is doing the same. The morning attack is over. But inside the city, it will continue for days in fever, infection, and pain. You survived without a wound. After seeing the treatment, this feels like the greater victory. 23. The rich are also suffering technically. After spending the morning among the wounded, you are sent to deliver a message to the noble quarter. This is how you discover that the siege is not affecting everyone equally. Technically, the wealthy are trapped too. Their gates are closed. Their roads are blocked. Enemy stones may still fall through their roofs. Disease does not request proof of income before entering a house. But suffering, like everything else in the city, has several price levels. You pass from the crowded market district into a street of larger stone homes with enclosed courtyards, private wells, servants, entrances, and windows covered with actual glass. Somewhere behind you, 18 people are sharing your floor. Here, one family is complaining that 6 guests have been forced to use the west chamber. It is difficult to remain sympathetic. A servant leads you through the home of a wealthy merchant who serves on the city council. The entrance hall is cold but clean. Rushes cover the floor. Tapestries hang against the walls to block drafts. A fire burns in a proper hearth. You briefly consider lying down beside it and refusing to leave. In the next room, the merchant is eating. His meal is not extravagant by peacetime standards. There is dark bread, cheese, onions, salted fish, and watered wine. By siege standards, it is a royal banquet. You stare at the fish. The fish has been dead for some time, yet still appears healthier than several people you know. The merchant reads the message, sighs, and complains that the council has seized 2 of his grain stores. He explains that his household must now economize. A servant removes a half-finished loaf from the table. You wonder where it is going. Your stomach begins taking a professional interest. The wealthy prepared better for sieges because they had more to prepare with. Their cellars held barrels of wine, sacks of grain, smoked meat, dried fruit, oil, candles, and firewood. They owned stronger homes, private courtyards, and storage rooms less accessible to rats, rain, and officials. At least, less accessible until the officials brought guards. As public supplies shrink, private stores become political targets. The council demands contributions. Merchants insist their food is needed for servants, guards, relatives, and essential business partners who happen to enjoy excellent cheese. Nobles claim their horses must be fed for military use. The poor begin suggesting that the horses could serve the city in a different, more delicious form. This creates tension. Still, wealth cannot solve every problem. Servants fall ill, firewood runs low, fine flour disappears, wine is diluted, fresh meat becomes memory. A noble household may begin the siege with roasted poultry and white bread, then slowly descend toward barley loaves and salted beans. This is described as terrible hardship. In your district, people have begun scraping spilled flour from tables. The noble quarter also receives enemy projectiles. Large stone houses resist fire better than timber homes, but roofs collapse just as convincingly. One wealthy family loses an entire upper chamber to a siege stone. Nobody is killed. The owner spends the afternoon complaining about a damaged tapestry. The tapestry depicts a heroic battle. This feels like criticism from the universe. Rumors spread that some wealthy residents are hiding food while others starve. Crowds gather outside certain houses. Guards are posted to prevent looting. One merchant opens his cellar voluntarily to prove he has nothing concealed. The inspection reveals 8 barrels of wine, 3 sacks of oats, smoked pork, dried apples, and enough cheese to start a small religion. He explains that these are ordinary household supplies. The crowd develops a different interpretation of ordinary. By evening, part of the food is confiscated and carried toward communal stores. The merchant watches each barrel leave with the expression of a man attending several funerals at once. You return home carrying a sealed reply and one small piece of bread slipped to you by a kitchen servant. You hide it beneath your cloak. For a moment, you understand the merchants completely. Then you enter your crowded room and divide it among the children. The pieces are tiny. Everyone eats them slowly. Across the city, rich and poor are becoming thinner. The difference is that the poor began first. 24, eating the city one animal at a time. Eventually, the animals begin disappearing. At first, nobody says much. A few chickens vanish from courtyards. Pigeons become less common on rooftops. The stray dogs that once slept near the market are suddenly very difficult to locate. People explain this in several ways. Perhaps the birds have flown away. Perhaps the dogs have escaped through drains. Perhaps every animal in the city has independently decided that the siege lacks long-term potential. Nobody asks too many questions because questions may be answered with stew. The official slaughter begins with livestock that can no longer be fed. Cattle consume grain and hay that humans also require, and the city has reached the stage where every mouth must justify itself before the council. Oxen used for hauling are protected at first. Horses needed by messengers and soldiers are protected longer. Decorative animals receive very little legal support. Butchers are ordered to slaughter selected cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. The meat is divided, salted when possible, and distributed according to rank, duty, influence, and the mysterious process by which officials always seem to receive the better cuts. Crowds gather outside the butcher stalls. People wait with bowls, tokens, and expressions of restrained violence. You receive a strip of meat so thin that holding it toward the light feels intrusive. At home, it is cut into smaller pieces and added to the communal pot. Everyone receives one piece. The rooster watches from its cage. For the first time, it appears to understand economics. Your cousin suggests the bird is useful because it wakes everyone. His mother says the bells already perform this service. The rooster's position weakens. As the siege continues, horses begin appearing at butcher stalls. These are not the healthiest horses. Strong military animals remain in service, carrying officers, hauling equipment, and looking increasingly nervous whenever they pass a kitchen. Old, injured, or starving animals are slaughtered first. Horse meat is not unfamiliar in desperate conditions, but people still approach it with emotional caution. A horse may have plowed fields, carried messages, pulled carts, or belonged to one family for years. Now it is lunch. Hunger is extremely good at revising relationships. Pigeons disappear next. Children climb roofs to collect eggs and trap birds. Nets are stretched across courtyards. Grain is scattered as bait, although using food to capture smaller food causes philosophical discomfort. Cats become scarce. Some are hidden by owners, some leave the crowded streets, some are stolen. Dogs are guarded indoors by family who still consider them companions. Other households begin describing them as animals that have eaten without contributing for several weeks. Nobody wants to discuss the conclusion. The official food stores now contain almost nothing fresh. Dried peas, spoiled grain, beans, bran, and roots become the base of every meal. Gardens inside the walls are stripped bare. Cabbage stalks are boiled. Turnip leaves are chopped. Onion skins enter pots with confidence. People gather edible weeds from churchyards, courtyards, wall edges, and abandoned lots. Nettles, sorrel, and other plants can provide something green, assuming you can identify them correctly. One family gathers the wrong leaves. The healer becomes involved. Tree bark may be ground and mixed into flour. Leather is scraped, soaked, boiled, and softened when conditions become extreme enough. Old belts, harness pieces, and shield coverings are inspected with a new culinary interest. You place a strip of boiled leather in your mouth. It tastes like a boot. This is because it was part of a boot. You chew for several minutes and make no measurable progress. Across the table, the farmhand claims leather is nourishing if prepared properly. You ask whether this piece was prepared properly. He continues chewing instead of answering. Rats are trapped in storerooms and alleys. For weeks, they have eaten the city's grain. Now the city begins returning the favor. People who once screamed at the sight of a rat now discuss the best way to roast one. The animals are skinned, cleaned, and cooked thoroughly when fuel allows. Someone remarks that they taste like rabbit. Nobody present remembers rabbit well enough to disagree. The children become skilled at noticing anything edible. They collect spilled grain, chase pigeons, gather weeds, and watch every cooking pot with painful concentration. Meals grow quieter. Nobody complains about flavor now. Complaining suggests you have forgotten the central achievement of the meal. It exists. That evening, your household gathers around another thin stew. The pot contains peas, weeds, a little horse fat, and several pieces of meat nobody has identified aloud. The rooster's cage is empty. Your cousin says it escaped. His mother looks into her bowl. Nobody asks where it went. Outside, the bells mark the hour. Inside, spoons scrape wood until every trace of stew is gone. The city still has walls, towers, and banners. But slowly, meal by meal, it is eating everything else. 25, the knock at the gate. The trumpet sounds just after noon. One clear note rises beyond the walls, followed by another. Every head turns toward the main gate. For weeks, the enemy has communicated through stones, arrows, smoke, drums, and occasional attempts to climb into your home. A trumpet is almost polite. This makes it suspicious. Guards rush to the battlements. Archers take position. The gate captain orders everyone away from the entrance, which causes the entire nearby population to move closer. Curiosity remains undefeated by military discipline. You climb onto a broken cart and look between two houses toward the wall. Outside stands a small group of riders beneath a white flag. Their horses are clean. Their cloaks are dry. One man wears polished armor and appears to have eaten recently. The city dislikes him immediately. An envoy rides forward and calls for the gate captain. The captain answers from above. The conversation is shouted across the ditch, which gives diplomacy the calm atmosphere of an argument between neighbors over a hedge. The envoy announces that his commander offers terms. The word travels through the crowd. Terms, not mercy, not peace. Terms. If the city surrenders, the gates will be opened in an orderly fashion. The garrison will lay down its weapons. Certain commanders and officials will become prisoners. A ransom will be paid. The population, the envoy promises, will be spared. People repeat this last part quietly. Spared. It is a powerful word when everyone has spent weeks imagining the alternative. If the offer is refused, the bombardment will continue. The walls will be breached. When the city is taken by force, the commander will no longer guarantee anyone's safety. The envoy says this with impressive calm. He is delivering a threat, but he makes it sound like a weather report. The gate captain tells him the council will consider the offer. The envoy grants 1 day. Then the riders turn and return to camp. By the time they reach their tents, the city has divided itself into 2 armies. One side wants surrender. The food is almost gone. Disease fills the shelters. The walls are damaged. Another assault may succeed. Parents look at thin children and ask what honor will feed them tomorrow. The other side wants resistance. A relief army may still be coming. The enemy may be weaker than it appears. Surrender may bring executions, looting, imprisonment, or promises that disappear the moment the gate opens. Nobody trusts the enemy. Nobody entirely trusts the council either. The debate begins in the streets, before the officials have even reached the council hall. Merchants argue that the city must preserve lives and property. Soldiers accuse them of protecting property first. Refugees demand that the gates remain closed because they have already lost homes outside the walls. Residents whose houses have been destroyed explain that they are beginning to understand the refugees' position less enthusiastically. At the church, priests debate duty and mercy. At the tavern, everyone debates everything. One former soldier insists surrendering would invite slaughter. A carpenter asks whether waiting for a breach would somehow make slaughter less likely. The former soldier tells him he does not understand warfare. The carpenter points out that he has rebuilt the wall 4 times this month and understands enough. Inside the council hall, the city's leaders gather around a table. The commander says the defenses can hold. The master of stores says grain may last another week. The physicians say sickness is spreading. A wealthy merchant says the ransom will ruin the city. Someone asks whether being dead would improve its finances. Outside, the square fills. People wait for news beneath cold rain. Some pray for surrender. Others pray for victory. A few pray that whichever decision is made can be blamed on somebody else later. Then a rider appears on the western wall. He claims lights were seen beyond the hills the previous night. Friendly signals, perhaps. A relief army. The rumor moves through the city like fire. Hope returns instantly, reckless and bright. The council delays its decision. 1 more day, they say. Just 1 more day. That night, you stand near the gate listening to enemy hammers beyond the walls. They are preparing for another assault. Inside, families whisper about the terms. Outside, the envoy's white flag waits in the dark. By tomorrow, the city must decide whether to trust an enemy promise, a distant rumor, or walls that have already begun to crack. For now, the gates remain closed. Hope has bought another night. The price may be everyone inside.